The iron gates of London's royal sanctuaries have stood for centuries as silent monuments to an unyielding code of discretion, privacy, and absolute security. Behind these weathered stone walls and manicured gardens, the British royal family conducts their private lives away from the relentless gaze of the global public. To the millions of tourists who gather outside each year, places like Kensington Palace appear as peaceful, almost static symbols of historical continuity. Protected by an elite vanguard of law enforcement officers whose primary duty is to blend into the background while maintaining a flawless shield of defense. The contract between the Crown and those chosen to guard it is built entirely on an unwritten foundation of absolute trust, dignity, and a shared understanding that nothing from within the perimeter should ever compromise the sanctity of the household. Yet, history has shown that the greatest vulnerabilities do not always arrive in the form of external physical threats or highly coordinated breaches by outsiders. Sometimes, the delicate equilibrium of a royal residence is disrupted by subtle shifts within the ranks of those wearing the uniform, reminding us that even the most heavily fortified estates are ultimately vulnerable to human error, lapse of judgment, and the slow erosion of institutional culture. Security at this level demands a standard of behavior that transcends ordinary policing, transforming the assignment into a matter of national prestige where every spoken word carries immense weight. When that standard wavers even slightly, it sends ripples far beyond the immediate courtyard, raising profound questions about the modern state of elite protection units and the invisible friction that exists between traditional royal expectations and contemporary workplace realities. To truly comprehend the gravity of recent events, one must look closely at the complex architecture of protection that surrounds the modern House of Windsor, an intricate network where a single misstep can quickly become a matter of intense public scrutiny and internal alarm. If you find these deep historical investigations and behind-the-scenes accounts compelling, please consider subscribing to the channel to ensure you never miss our deep dives into global security, historical legacies, and the hidden mechanisms that govern the world's most high-profile institutions. The story unfolding today is not just about a breach of protocol, but about the fragile nature of trust at the very pinnacle of state authority. For decades, the Metropolitan Police Service, particularly its specialized protection commands, has operated under a microscopic level of observation, knowing that any perceived failure could damage the very fabric of public and royal confidence. The latest developments, which began surfacing quiet warnings through official channels, point toward a deep and unsettling breakdown in professional decorum, precisely where it is least acceptable. As the world watches the evolving roles of the younger generation of royals, the atmosphere surrounding their daily lives has become increasingly charged with an intense desire for stability and quietude. This desire, however, must constantly contend with the human element of security operations, where long shifts, high stress, and constant proximity to extreme privilege can occasionally foster environments ripe for workplace complications. What began as a series of isolated interactions within the outer boundaries of a historic palace has now ballooned into a formal reckoning, illustrating how quickly administrative friction can escalate when it touches the lives of the nation's future monarchs. The setting for this quiet storm is an estate that has witnessed centuries of political intrigue, personal tragedies, and triumphs, making any modern controversy there feel amplified by the weight of history itself. As investigators began peeling back the layers of a formal complaint, they uncovered a pattern of behavior that spanned more than a year, a prolonged period during which the expected boundaries of professionalism seemed to blur. It is within this atmospheric tension where the ancient past meets the rigid administrative protocols of 21st century law enforcement that the true narrative begins to take shape. setting the stage for an unprecedented institutional clash over what constitutes acceptable conduct in the shadow of the throne. The epicenter of this developing institutional crisis settled directly upon the historic grounds of Kensington Palace, a primary residence and working headquarters for Prince William and Kate Middleton, the Prince and Princess of Wales. It was here, within an environment requiring the absolute pinnacle of operational security and personal discretion, that a group of 5 elite Metropolitan Police officers allegedly engaged in a pattern of behavior that would ultimately cost them their prestigious assignments. The official timeline established by the subsequent investigations reveals that these inappropriate incidents were not isolated occurrences, but rather a series of actions taking place on multiple occasions over a prolonged 13-month period stretching from August 2023 to September 2024. For more than a year, these officers, entrusted with the critical responsibility of frontline protective roles at one of the most high-profile residences in the world, operated under a cloud of deteriorating professional standards that remained unnoticed by senior leadership until a formal civilian complaint was finally lodged. The catalyst for the investigation occurred in October 2024, when a female employee of the Kensington Palace royal household came forward to officially report the conduct of the security detachment stationed outside the palace walls. According to details that eventually leaked to the public, the nature of the complaints highlighted a deeply unprofessional workplace environment, characterized by remarks and behaviors that senior household staff deemed entirely unacceptable for an elite protection detail. Among the specific allegations brought forward by the complainant was a highly derogatory comment made by one of the officers, who reportedly described the internal management and environment of Kensington Palace as being completely full of Hitlers. A statement that caused immediate offense and signaled a profound lack of respect for the royal institution they were paid to defend. In addition to these hostile verbal expressions, the investigation examined allegations of inappropriate boundary crossing between the armed police detachment and the civilian palace staff, including an instance where another officer actively attempted to solicit and add the female employee on his personal Facebook social media account. A source familiar with the internal proceedings indicated that while the specific allegations were considered somewhat tame in comparison to major criminal misconduct and notably contained no explicitly sexual elements, the collective tone of the comments was widely perceived as distinctly misogynistic and entirely incompatible with the dignified environment of a royal estate. Upon receiving the formal public complaint, the Metropolitan Police Service was forced to launch an immediate internal investigation into the behavior of the 5 frontline officers to determine whether their actions constituted a dismissible breach of law enforcement regulations. The findings of the Internal Review Board ultimately concluded that while the officers' behavior fell significantly below the high standards expected of personnel in elite protective positions, the actions did not technically meet the legal threshold required for formal charges of gross misconduct. Instead of facing a public disciplinary tribunal or termination from the police force, the 5 officers were subjected to an administrative process known as reflective practice, a procedural mechanism designed to force officers to deeply consider their negative actions, identify crucial professional learning opportunities for the future, and correct their behavior under close supervisory monitoring. In a public statement addressing the controversial outcome, a representative for the Metropolitan Police reaffirmed that it remains an absolute priority for the department to ensure that all officers and staff uphold the highest possible standards of professionalism in order to maintain public trust and confidence. However, the decision by the police department to stop short of formal disciplinary action did not satisfy the senior administrators overseeing the daily operations of the royal household. Operating independently of the police force's internal disciplinary thresholds, senior royal household officials exercised their autonomous authority over palace grounds and enacted a swift, sweeping punitive measure against the controversial security detachment. Recognizing that the presence of these individuals compromised the essential atmosphere of trust and mutual respect required within a royal residence, the household leadership made the definitive decision to permanently ban all 5 officers from ever working at any royal property again. To enforce this absolute ban, the administration officially revoked the officers' security clearance passes, stripping them of their access to Kensington Palace and ensuring they would be permanently reassigned to standard policing duties far away from the royal family. While the sweeping decision to expel the guards came directly from the highest levels of the civilian royal household management, official sources confirmed that Prince William and Princess Kate were not personally involved in making the ultimate administrative ruling. Due to the sensitive nature of the security breach occurring right outside their primary workplace, the Prince and Princess of Wales were fully informed of the ongoing matter and the subsequent banning of their guards, allowing them to monitor the safety of their domestic environment. This internal friction highlights a growing structural tension within the modern British security apparatus, where the traditional rigid expectations of the royal court must interface daily with contemporary civilian law enforcement personnel who are subject to standard public sector regulations. The revelation that elite guards could display such a casual disregard for professional boundaries, while stationed at the doorstep of the future monarch, has sent shockwaves through the diplomatic protection commands, prompting a wider review of how officers are vetted and monitored when assigned to royal duties. As the details of the 13-month pattern of behavior began to crystallize, public interest shifted toward the broader context of the royal family's changing domestic arrangements and the immense financial and logistical costs required to secure their multiple estates across the country. The incident at Kensington Palace serves as a stark reminder that even within the most heavily guarded square mile in London, the human element remains the most unpredictable variable in the entire security equation, transforming a quiet administrative complaint into a major public reflection on the standards of modern royal protection. The permanent removal of these 5 protection officers from the royal environment marks a critical chapter in the ongoing evolution of the domestic and professional lives of the Prince and Princess of Wales. To fully comprehend why a security breach at Kensington Palace carries such profound institutional weight, one must examine the complex dual-purpose nature of this historic London estate and its relationship to the future of the British monarchy. While Kensington Palace remains the official working headquarters and the long-term metropolitan home of the royal couple, their daily logistical footprint has expanded significantly in recent years as they balance their public state duties with a desire for a more private, grounded family life for their 3 young children. This delicate balance led to a major geographical shift when Prince William, who is now 43 years old, and Princess Kate, currently 44, decided to relocate their primary family residence out of central London. The royal couple, along with 12-year-old Prince George, 11-year-old Princess Charlotte, and 8-year-old Prince Louis, established a new domestic base at Forest Lodge, a substantial and highly secure property situated within the expansive, protected grounds of the Windsor estate. This transition to the countryside allowed the children to attend school away from the constant disruption of urban media attention, yet it simultaneously created a highly complex multi-site security operation requiring flawless coordination between various elite police detachments. Financial records and official reports indicate that the Prince and Princess of Wales are personally paying an estimated $411,435 annually to rent this 8-bedroom Georgian mansion, which also includes 2 detached cottages on the surrounding grounds to accommodate their essential support staff and personal security personnel. Prior to making the move to Forest Lodge, the family had spent over 3 years residing at Adelaide Cottage, a smaller 4-bedroom historic property also located on the Windsor estate, which served as their primary sanctuary during a period of immense personal and national transition. Despite this current emphasis on a more secluded rural lifestyle for their growing children, the long-term strategic importance of Kensington Palace remains entirely undiminished for the future of the monarchy. Official royal sources and historical precedents confirm that when Prince William eventually ascends the throne as king, he and the Princess of Wales will return to live and work full-time at Kensington Palace, utilizing its massive infrastructure to carry out their major state responsibilities and manage the vast administrative apparatus of the sovereign. Because the palace is destined to serve as the ultimate home and command center for the next monarch, any breakdown in the professional standards of its security perimeter is viewed with the utmost seriousness by the high-ranking officials who oversee the continuity of the state. The individuals at the center of this modern security apparatus, Prince William and Princess Kate, have spent decades preparing for these immense responsibilities, with their biographies reflecting a deep commitment to modernizing the public face of the royal family while fiercely protecting the integrity of their household. Prince William, born at St Mary's Hospital in London, was educated at Eton College and the University of St Andrews, where he met Catherine Middleton before embarking on a rigorous career in the British Armed Forces, serving as a dedicated search and rescue helicopter pilot. Princess Kate, who grew up in Berkshire and excelled in art history during her university years, has carved out a distinct public role focused heavily on early childhood development, mental health awareness, and visual arts, winning widespread public praise for her stoic and dignified approach to her royal duties. The pressure on their immediate household is immense, as they represent the primary bridge between the ancient traditions of the House of Windsor and the scrutiny of a 21st century media landscape. When frontline police officers who are highly trained and heavily vetted to protect such vital public figures exhibit behaviors that are perceived as unprofessional, disrespectful, or misogynistic, it threatens to undermine the absolute trust required between the royals and their security details. The historical context of royal protection in the United Kingdom is filled with lessons, showing that the safety of the sovereign depends entirely on the moral character and unyielding discipline of the Guard. The decision by senior royal household staff to bypass the lenient administrative conclusions of the Metropolitan Police and issue a permanent lifetime ban against the 5 officers demonstrates an institutional refusal to tolerate anything less than perfection within the palace gates. This decisive action sends a clear, unambiguous signal across the entire British law enforcement network that working at a royal residence is a supreme privilege that can be instantly revoked the moment personal conduct falls below the dignified standards of the court. As the Prince and Princess of Wales continue to divide their time between the peaceful confines of Forest Lodge in Windsor and their official state offices at Kensington Palace, the management of their security will undoubtedly undergo further intense scrutiny and reform. The permanent revocation of these 5 security passes serves as a lasting reminder that the true strength of a royal fortress lies not just in its iron gates or its armed sentries, but in the invisible, unbroken bond of professionalism, respect, and absolute discretion that must exist between those who wear the crown and those who are sworn to protect it.